80-year-old woman's lonely birthday transformed by a single dad's incredible act of kindness. Margaret sat in her living room, staring blankly at the mountain of unopened birthday cards cluttering her coffee table. Another year. Another birthday, each one heavier than the last, a grim reminder of loss and loneliness. The cheerful designs of the cards felt like an affront to her aching heart, mocking her isolation. Her fingers trembled as she picked up one card, the vibrant colors contrasting sharply with the pallid shadows of her memories. She hesitated, her breath hitching with the thought of going through each one, witnessing the names of friends and family long gone. She felt their absence like a stone in her chest, thick and suffocating. Outside, the sun beat down relentlessly. Tom, a hard-working single dad, struggled to balance two overflowing aspects of his life: his mechanic job and his spirited kids. Exhaustion gnawed at him. Every turn of the wrench felt heavier, every tick of the clock seemed to mock him. He glanced toward Margaret's house, the curtains drawn tight, as if she were a ghost haunting her own life. The sight tugged on his heartstrings, triggering memories of his mother's gentle laughter that faded too soon. It was a stark reminder that life was slipping by, just as it had for her. Tom's mind raced. Why was he waiting? Why let another birthday fade without recognition? His children needed to learn kindness, especially in a world where loneliness loomed large. With a resolute determination, he gathered them for a secret mission, throwing a surprise birthday party for Margaret. It was a leap into the unknown, a path fraught with uncertainty. How would they manage? Their pantry was bare, their craft supplies scant. Each idea felt daunting: a cake from a mix. Decorations from old newspaper. But there was no turning back, not when life called for an act of genuine care. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With each passing moment, Margaret's internal storm intensified. The weight of solitude pressed against her fragile heart as she reluctantly accepted the reality that loneliness was her companion now. She rose from her seat, making her way to the window. What was she hoping to see? Was she yearning for a mirage of connection? Just as despair threatened to pull her under, unfamiliar sounds, laughter, singing filtered through her thoughts, breaking through the static of her sorrow. Then it hit her. Was it possible? Could someone remember her on this day? A flicker of hope emerged, quickly crushed by the fear of disappointment, of being wrong. As she slowly parted the curtain, disbelief gripped her. Tom's kids stood there, naively cheerful, their faces lit with determination. In that moment of profound vulnerability, Margaret's heart and mind battled fiercely. It felt too good to be real, yet what if it was just another reminder of what she had lost? As she stood at the window, the weight of the past surged within her, pushing her closer to the brink. Just as they began to chant happy birthday, Margaret realized life had the audacity to surprise her, igniting a mix of dread and longing deep in her chest. And then, just when she thought the world might stretch out its arms to embrace her, the doorbell rang, reverberating through the silence. Panic seized her breath as she whispered, "What is going to happen now?" Margaret's heart raced as she stood frozen, the doorbell echoing through the house like a thunderclap against her fragile spirit. Why was she hesitating? What was she afraid of? Those questions spiraled within her, battling against the thread of hope introduced by the children's joyful singing. Just when the urge to retreat back into her cocoon of solitude surged, she felt an unexpected determination rising up from the depths of her despair. Perhaps this was not just another disappointment waiting to unfold. With shaking hands, she reached for the doorknob and turned it, drawing the door open. The sight that greeted her sent an electric shock through her body. Tom's children beamed up at her, their smiles a balm for her aching heart. Streamers hung haphazardly around their necks, faces painted with bright colors. A cacophony of cheerful voices erupted in front of her, the syllables of happy birthday repeating like a mantra intended to lure her from her solitude. They held a slightly lopsided cake, the frosting still warm, surrounded by a few balloons hastily tied together. "What is all this?" Margaret managed to stammer, though her mind raced with a myriad of emotions. Was this real? Was someone truly here for her, prompting her to step out of her lonely existence? Her voice trembled, mixing confusion with unexpected gratitude. "It's your birthday, Mrs. Margaret," one of the girls declared, her eyes shining with innocence. "We wanted to celebrate you. Can we come in?" In that moment, something shifted within Margaret, a realization, a blossoming understanding that she was not forgotten, that life still held opportunities to connect despite the heaviness of loss. With an awkward smile, she opened the door wider, allowing the children, along with their enthusiasm, to pour into her home like sunshine cutting through fog.as. The children darted around, decorating her living room with crumpled paper and laughter. Margaret's initial apprehension evaporated. Each giggle and squeal infused her with a forgotten warmth. A painful hollowness she had grown accustomed to felt like it was filling, little by little. Yet, as she watched them, a new weight pressed against her heart, a doubt that threatened to shatter this fragile joy. Would she fail them? A small voice in her mind echoed fears that her presence might not be enough, that she was merely a relic of the past they mistakenly celebrated. What right did she have to welcome this fragile hope after years of isolation? Margaret shook her head, tearing free from that negative spiral. Reaching for the cake, she noticed its heartwarming imperfections and the effort behind it. This was what humanity felt like, flaws and all. As the children readied a birthday wish moment, she realized that they were teaching her just as much as she had to offer. Perhaps, amidst her doubts and fears, she could cultivate a space in her heart for joy once again. "All right, you little rascals," she called out, injecting playful authority into her tone. "Let us light the candles, shall we?" The anticipation grew like fizzing fireworks, and for the first time in years, Margaret felt the raw thrill of connection seeping back into her bones. She closed her eyes, making a genuine wish for herself. Maybe it was time to recognize the chance for happiness as something that could still blossom in her fallen world, but just as the candles flickered with life and laughter bubbled all around her, a shadow shifted in the corner of her mind. Was this a one-time encounter? As the reverberations of joy washed over her, an underlying fear of returning to solitude loomed closer. "What's next for me?" Margaret pondered, glancing at the warm faces around her. She could sense the arrival of a choice, an inflection point between pushing deeper into this newfound connection or retreating into her well-worn patterns of isolation. The door to her heart had creaked open, but from here on, it was up to her whether to step through. Suddenly, the doorbell rang again. Uncertainty slithered through her joy as she exchanged glances with Tom's kids, who were equally intrigued. Who could that be? She wondered aloud, the joy unsteadying in her chest as her heart raced once more. As Margaret hesitated at the door, her thoughts raced back through the tangled web of her past. The laughter of the children felt like a lifeline, yet another knock after their jubilant entry stirred a new wave of anxiety. She caught herself yearning for the comfort of silence, her instincts pulling her toward retreat. But the vibrant energy of the children behind her flickered a spark of resolve. "Let us see who that is," she said, forcing a cheerful tone, though her heart thudded with uncertainty. As she opened the door once again, she could feel the children's eyes on her, their excitement palpable. Standing on the threshold was a tall figure, a man with tousled hair and a warm, benign smile that intertwined with the chaos of colorful streamers and balloons spilling from her living room. "Sorry to barge in on your celebration," he said, his eyes lighting up as he recognized the children. "I just finished setting up a surprise for them at the park. I didn't want them to miss out on cake time." "Tom!" Margaret exclaimed, the name feeling unfamiliar on her tongue, like a concept she hadn't truly grasped until this moment. Slowly, the entire weight of the last few years began to uncoil as she looked at him. "Are we interrupting something?" he asked, glancing back at the animated children, who immediately resumed their giggling, setting aside the warm cake in favor of balloon darting each other into wild fits of laughter. No, not at all. It's my birthday, she said, her voice tinged with disbelief, as if the event she had nearly turned her back on had suddenly become significant. Happy birthday. He beamed, stepping over the threshold without hesitation, his presence filling the space with an unanticipated warmth. The energy shifted, Tom was a catalyst, and Margaret felt herself being drawn into the moment. I brought some extra treats too. I hope everyone likes cookies. As he unpacked the delicacies, Margaret felt a pull toward that cheerful composure he exuded. It struck her how very different he was from the shadows she often faced. He illustrated a determination to nurture connections and relationships, a stark contrast to her solitude. From the corner of her mind, questions stirred. How had she come to view life as a series of disappointments? Would she always believe a sense of joy was a fleeting illusion? Awareness sparkled as she observed Tom interacting with the children, uplifting them as if they were his own. The way he engaged with her fear dissipated some of her isolation. Perhaps meeting him could serve as a guidepost, offering an opportunity to redefine the choices ahead of her. You should tell them a birthday story, Tom suggested, gesturing toward the kids, who were pausing in mid-activity to look back at her expectantly. A story? Her palms felt clammy as she looked down at them. What do you say? He pressed, the gentle challenge lacing his question with encouragement. All right, she replied, her voice steadied. What kind of story could she share? A memory surged back, her own childhood filled with adventures and laughter growing up in a busy household. Gathering her thoughts, she took a deep breath, enveloped in the rhythms of this small, informal circle, yet, as she began weaving the tale, with each flicker of her voice, an unsettling inkling took root in her mind. This moment demanded more than mere storytelling. Each phrase mingled with apprehension and possibility. Could she share not only tales from her past but embrace an uncertain future with this newfound connection? As the children leaned in, immersed in her story, Margaret's heart grew lighter, a fragile hope suspended in time, yet it danced with unanswered questions. What if this was merely a momentary reprieve from her loneliness? What if she allowed herself to extend beyond today? The crackling energy of the children reverberated through her, and with every laugh that erupted from them, the fear threatened to dissipate like mist before the sun. But she noticed Tom watching her closely, probing deeper than the surface. It made her reassess her own apprehensions. In that instant, Margaret recognized the pivotal choice stretching before her amidst the joyous clamor. Would she continue to illuminate her existence through the voices of others, or could she finally articulate her own desires? Just as she resolved to pursue her thoughts, the doorbell rang again, sending a jolt of uncertainty crashing through her. This time, it was not merely about her story, it was a summons to confront her own future directly. Let us see who that is, she declared, her resolve burgeoning as she stepped towards the door yet again, heart racing once more. What awaited her could change the very course of her life. The door swung open, revealing a familiar face, one that made Margaret's breath catch in her throat. It was her sister, Elise, standing there with a hesitant smile, her hands laden with an assortment of gifts. The last time they had seen each other felt like a lifetime ago. The rift between them formed over misunderstandings and unspoken resentments. Margaret, Elise began, her voice a soft whisper that contrasted with the chaos bubbling behind Margaret. The children squealed in the background, the initial excitement of cake time returning as they resumed their games. Hey! I didn't expect you, Margaret replied, caught in a wave of surprise. Her pulse quickened, memories of past arguments flashing through her mind, fights that had driven a wedge between them, laden with accusations and unmet expectations. But today wasn't about the past, was it? The warmth of Tom's presence urged her to embrace this moment with an open heart. I thought I'd come by and celebrate, Elise continued, her eyes darting to the animated children at play. I know it's been a while. Yes, it has, Margaret said, tentatively stepping aside to let her sister in. As Elise entered, a surge of warmth spread through Margaret, but it was tainted with uncertainty. Could this be a new beginning, or were they both stepping back into old patterns? I brought you a little something, Elise said, handing her a beautifully wrapped box. Tension flickered in the air, and for a moment, reality felt suspended. Margaret hesitated, forcing a smile that did little to mask her anxiety. "Thank you," she managed, glancing at Tom, who was fidgeting with a tray of cookies, giving her an encouraging nod. "Why don't you tell the kids about it?" Elise suggested, a glint of mischief lighting her eyes as she leaned closer. "Right. Kids!" Margaret exclaimed, her voice rising to match the excitement circling. "How about we take a little break from our games and check out what Aunt Elise brought me?" The children quickly gathered around her, curious and eager, their laughter a sweet counterpoint to the latent tension swirling within. As she unwrapped the gifts, giggles erupted from the children, and for a fleeting moment, Margaret felt the possibility of reconciliation hanging in the air. But as each layer peeled back, exposing memories more than material, unease settled over her. The gifts reminded her of their shared childhood, their adventures, laughter, and it felt painfully evident what had been lost. Returning to the shadows of past grievances felt like a monumental step backward. "Remember when we used to dress up like princesses?" Elise asked, her eyes glinting with nostalgia. Margaret felt a pang, a tug at the fabric of her heart. "Yeah, I do," she replied quietly. "It was fun." A shadow crossed her features, the reverie broke as she recalled how swiftly life had turned difficult. "Do you think we could, I don't know, dress up again?" Elise's tone carried every hope and wish for the past, yet Margaret caught a hint of apprehension. This wasn't just a birthday moment. It was a leap toward bridging their chasm, a request for connection. Could she admit that she longed for the sister she once had? That, perhaps, the vestiges of anger had waned under the weight of time. I guess we could," Margaret ventured, surprising herself at the tremor of excitement creeping into her voice. "Why not add a little sparkle to today?" Tom chimed in, his eyes sparkling with encouragement. "I can grab some accessories. Every birthday needs a little flair." Margaret's heart fluttered at Tom's support, his encouragement igniting a wave of courage within her. Here was this man, a friend she barely knew, urging her toward connection while simultaneously creating a space for her sister and her. As laughter erupted once again, Margaret realized she was faced with a choice that could shape her future: cling to the shadows of resentment or step boldly into the light of reconnection. "Okay," she declared, her voice ringing with newfound determination. "Let us get that sparkle." In that moment, a flicker of hope ignited within her, a chance not only to heal their frayed bond but to redefine what family meant. As the children clamored for her attention, the door swung open once more, this time drawing her focus bitterly back to the threshold. This unexpected guest stood there, causing her heart to race anew. The moment of truth beckoned, whoever was at the door held the potential to shift everything yet again. What awaited behind that door could demand another leap of faith? Was she prepared to confront yet another facet of her tangled past? Margaret's heart raced, a mixture of apprehension and curiosity swirling within her. The moment felt electric, charged with the weight of unspoken words and looming decisions. She exchanged a quick glance with Elise, who mirrored her sense of uncertainty, and then turned her attention back to the door. With a slow inhale, she stepped toward the threshold, bracing for whatever awaited on the other side. Tom, noticing her trepidation, moved to stand beside her. His steady presence anchored her wavering courage. Whoever stood outside carried an unknown burden, another piece of her past threatening to surface. As the door swung wider, Margaret prepared herself for a confrontation she hadn't anticipated. Her heart sank when she recognized the familiar features of Claire, an old friend turned adversary. They had once shared laughter and dreams before life started weaving its complex, often painful tapestry. "Margaret," Claire said, the corners of her mouth lifting into a tight smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "I heard about the celebration and thought I'd stop by." Margaret felt a rush of emotion: surprise, anger, nostalgia swirling chaotically in her chest. "Claire, I didn't expect to see you here." "Yeah, it's been a while," Claire replied, her gaze flickering away from Margaret's piercing eyes. "Can I come in?" Margaret hesitated. Memories flooded back, disagreements that exploded into shouting matches, the painful fallout over friendships and loyalties. Yet today, something was different. She was aware that this wasn't just about the past, it was also about the present and the potential for her future. Sure, she said, stepping aside. She felt Tom's gentle nudge of encouragement as Claire crossed the threshold into her home. "Wow, it's so lively in here," Claire exclaimed, her voice almost cheerful, but Margaret could sense the underlying tension. Claire's eyes drifted towards the throngs of children, their laughter echoing like a bomb over her emotions. "Yeah, it's a birthday party," she replied curtly, turning her focus back to Elise. "I was just about to help the kids with the costumes." Elise's curious expression exchanged between them spoke volumes. With magnanimous warmth, she patted Margaret's shoulder. "Want to show Claire what we've been up to?" The words hung in the air, challenging Margaret to consider bridging the gap that had once separated her from Claire. Yet the mere suggestion filled her with a cold apprehension. Did she even want Claire back in her life? "Right," she finally muttered, her voice steady despite the turmoil within. The simple act of exposing old wounds left her feeling raw. Taking a deep breath, she gestured toward the colorful array of fabric and accessories gathered in the corner. "Let us go." As they approached the children, Margaret felt the atmosphere shift, laughter rang about them like a siren's call, pulling at the tattered edges of her self-imposed isolation. For the first time in years, she sensed the possibility of creating bonds anew, perhaps even with those she had cast aside. "Do you remember how much fun we used to have dressing up?" Claire asked as they reached the makeshift costume corner. There was a longing in Claire's voice that mirrored Margaret's own. "I do," she admitted, the weight of old memories melting away, leaving only a hesitant acknowledgement of the joys they once shared. Yet unease mingled with her nostalgia. Offering forgiveness was confronting the parts of herself she had guarded for so long. The answer wasn't simply wrapped in acceptance, it was layered in risk, the risk of vulnerability and of moments shared with someone who had the power to hurt her again. "Should we dress up together?" Elise's voice interrupted the silence, her optimism sparking hope in the air like confetti after a celebration. Margaret looked from Clark to Elise, a war raging inside her. Could a simple act of dressing up, of playing, help them reclaim what had been lost? The answer wasn't clear, yet the inviting laughter of children urged her toward the unknown. I think I'd do like that," she finally said, surprise filtering through her own voice. Enthusiasm and reluctance washed over her in waves, the air felt charged, and as memories fused with the present, Margaret realized she had to decide if she was willing to let hope guide her forward. This was another leap of faith, another chance to rewrite her story, but just as they began to sift through the costumes, a sharp knock interrupted the joyous distraction. Another unexpected visitor. Each knock reverberated in her chest like a question she'd yet to answer. Could today really be the day she decided to confront everything, the past, the uncertainty, and the stakes of her relationships? The air hung with uncomfortable potential. Who would stand on the other side of this door? Margaret inhaled deeply, poised at the brink of another moment that promised transformation. Was she ready to open not just the door, but her heart once more? Margaret paused, the echo of that sharp knock settling deep within her chest. The laughter of children, the vibrant colors of costumes surrounding her, they all felt distant now, as if the world outside her door tightly held the weight of unresolved pasts. Every sound bounced in her mind, each one urging her toward a decision that felt simultaneously urgent and terrifying. Claire shifted beside her, glancing nervously toward the door. This was uncharted territory, a moment that could fracture or fortify the fragile bond they were cautiously re-establishing. Margaret's throat constricted at the thought. Would this visitor further complicate her already tumultuous emotions? Should I get that?" Elise asked, peering over at Margaret with innocent curiosity, unaware of the maelstrom brewing within. "No," Margaret uttered, a sudden intensity in her voice that caught Claire off guard. She wasn't prepared for confrontation, not yet. Instead, she placed a hand on Elise's shoulder and smiled gently. "Let us focus on the costumes for now. As the children rummaged through the pile, Margaret turned her mental focus back to Claire, who remained poised, as if waiting for permission to take the next step. This was more than just playful dress-up, it was a chance to explore their shared history, the common ground they had almost lost. "Look at this." Elise held up a sparkly cape, her eyes bright with excitement. "Can we have a magic-themed party?" Margaret found herself drawn into Elise's joy, and it softened the tension that lingered between her and Claire. "A magic-themed party sounds amazing," she agreed. As she helped Elise tie the cape around her shoulders, she felt Claire's eyes watching her. "What do you think?" Margaret turned her head slightly toward Claire, a tentative olive branch. "Would you like to help with the decorations?" Claire's hesitation was palpable, a crack in her steely facade. This was the moment. The choice lingered in the air, and Margaret's heart thudded in expectation. Was Claire ready to step back into her life, or would the past overshadow this fragile present? I'd like that," Claire finally replied, her voice barely above a whisper. There was a flicker in her eyes, a glimpse of vulnerability that Margaret hadn't expected. Encouraged, Margaret waved a hand toward the makeshift craft area. "Then let us create some magic together." As they gathered supplies, glitter, colorful paper, and markers, Margaret felt buoyed by an unexpected thrill. This felt almost surreal, the way their laughter harmonized with the children's giggles. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe it was possible to mend what had once been broken, yet, as they joined forces in crafting whimsical decorations, the knock returned, more insistent this time. The momentary joy they built teetered on the edge of disruption once more. Margaret met Claire's gaze, and something unspoken passed between them, an understanding that both were teetering on the brink of transformation, fearful that the knock at the door might dismantle the fragile fabric they were weaving. Who could that be? Claire's voice quivered slightly, and Margaret felt the sincerity behind the question. She, too, wondered about the implications, the surge of reality demanding its reckoning. "I don't know," Margaret replied, her voice steady despite the apprehension clawing at her insides. "But we can't let anything take away this moment." With that, she steeled her resolve. Margaret marched toward the door, ready to confront whatever lay beyond. This chapter of her life needed not just hope but also clarity. As she hovered over the doorknob, she recognized that not only was she about to unlock the door to an unexpected visitor, but also to deeper revelations about herself and her choices. Just as she turned the knob, another thought gripped her: how far was she willing to go in embracing this change? Margaret opened the door, and everything shifted. Eyes widened, breaths caught, the past and perhaps even a part of her future stood there waiting. Would the confrontation push her back into her shell, or would it lead to a breakthrough she never anticipated? Margaret inhaled sharply. She was on the edge of another defining moment. Margaret's heart raced as the door swung open, revealing a figure cloaked in shadows and uncertainty. The late afternoon sun cast a warm glow that illuminated the outline of a tall man, his expression obscured by a wide-brimmed hat. It was then that she felt a rush of conflicting emotions, the familiar tension of unease and a flicker of something she hadn't allowed herself to confront: curiosity. "Can I help you?" she asked, the words firm but her voice wavering just the slightest. She couldn't afford to show any weakness, not now when the stakes felt so high. The man shifted slightly, allowing the light to hit his face. Her breath hitched. It was Derek, the last person she thought she'd see after all these years. Clarity surged, intermingling with dread as she suddenly understood the implications of this visit. "Margaret," he said, a smile blooming across his lips. But there was no warmth in his tone, only a layer of misunderstanding that had woven itself through their history. "I was hoping we could talk." Inside, Margaret recoiled at the prospect. The ghosts of their past clawed at her mind, each one a reminder of hurt and betrayal. Yet, she couldn't slam the door shut on this critical moment, a moment laden with choices that would define her forward path. "We have nothing to discuss," she replied, her voice gathering strength she didn't know she possessed. Derek had never fit into the narrative she'd spun about her life with Claire and Elise. Yet as she stood there, framed by the remnants of the afternoon's laughter. Part of her questioned whether ignoring him would be an act of empowerment or just another form of escapism. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. But it's not just about us anymore," he said, his voice lowering in intensity as he gestured toward the chaos of colors and craft supplies surrounding her. "I've heard you're building a new life. I've been trying to find a way to make amends for what I've done." Margaret clenched her fists, torn between relief and anger. How could he possibly think he could insert himself back into her life with a few chosen words? She instinctively glanced back at Claire, silently seeking reassurance. Claire's face remained steadfast, reflecting both support and caution. This was their chance to reclaim an essential piece of their history, whether they were ready for it or not. Amends? You think you can just stroll back in with apologies and expect it to change everything? Margaret's voice crackled, the sharpness layering her unchecked emotions. There was power in her indignation, but also a creeping self-doubt. Is this truly how she wanted to confront her past? Derek's shoulders dropped a fraction, mood shifting like autumn leaves surrendering to the wind. "No, I don't expect instant forgiveness. But I'm hoping." His tone softened, punctuated by a sense of vulnerability now surfacing in his eyes. "I'm hoping you'll at least hear me out." Surrendering her anger felt akin to losing a cherished battle. But then she thought again of Claire, the bond they had started to piece together amidst the whimsical sparkle of glitter and markers. An internal battle waged within her. If she turned him away, would that fortify her resolve or isolate her further? Finally, Margaret drew in a deep breath, clarity arising from the turmoil inside. "You have 5 minutes, she declared, purposefully stepping aside. Each passing second stood heavy with potential consequences, both for confronting this specter of the past and for embracing the future. As Derek entered, Margaret realized the depths of her own courage. The act of standing her ground felt transformative, more significant than any moment spent decorating rooms with laughter and creativity. A new chapter beckoned, laden with uncertainty. But perhaps there lay beneath it the raw potential for some kind of resolution. As Derek took his seat at the small dining table filled with the remnants of a costume-making frenzy, Margaret felt a surge of determination that tinged the air like magic dust. What had she been avoiding all this time, and would facing him offer? The clarity she so desperately sought. Margaret felt the weight of time pressing down upon her. The moment was ripe for deeper revelations. Would she finally reconcile the past, or would it linger like a shadow, always keeping her in the dark? The atmosphere grew thick with tension as Derek sat down, the air heavy with unspoken words. Margaret watched him, her heart pounding as if each beat were a countdown. She had 5 minutes, an arbitrary measure, yet in this charged moment, it felt monumental. What could he possibly say that might shift the narrative of their past? Could he clarify the tangled web of choices and consequences that had shaped her life? "Thank you for letting me in," Derek said, his voice low and steady as he broke the silence. "I've spent years regretting how things ended between us. I know nothing I say can undo the damage, but I want you to know that I've changed." His gaze held hers, attempting to bridge the chasm of their history. Margaret felt a surge of conflicting emotions. Change. What did that even mean here? She didn't want to become a spectator of someone else's transformation while she remained mired in her own struggles. His words washed over her like waves, mixing anger and disbelief with a cautious glimmer of hope. "Changed how?" she asked, folding her arms defensively across her chest. "You left without a word. We fell apart, Derek. You shattered everything I believed in. How can I trust that this, whatever this is, means anything?" Derek hesitated, the shadows of regret crossing his features. "I realize now it wasn't just about you, it was me running away from my own problems. I was scared and I hurt you because of it. But for the first time in years, I'm trying to face my mistakes." Margaret's mind raced. Did his admission resonate with her own battles? Was she, too, guilty of avoiding the uncomfortable truths lurking at the edges of her reality? The thought unsettled her. She had finally begun rediscovering herself, building something meaningful with Claire and Elise. Was she willing to jeopardize that for the sake of old wounds and remnants of hurt? I've spent so long reclaiming my narrative, Derek, learning to stand tall after you walked away, she replied, firm yet vulnerable. And now you want me to rewrite it because you've decided to show up with regrets? I'm not asking you to rewrite anything, he said softly, his posture folding in on itself. I just want a chance to explain. To show you that I've been working to become a better person. I want to make things right, not just for us, but for my own children too. They deserve a father who doesn't hide from his past. Margaret's resolve faltered as the impact of his words hit her. She had never considered how his mistakes echoed through the lives of others. Her position felt conflicted. Could she allow this revelation to shake her foundation, or would it simply add another layer to her armor? Derek, listen to me, she said, her voice gaining weight. This isn't just about you or me. I have a life to consider now, people who depend on me to be whole for them. She gestured vaguely to the craft supplies still adorned with glitter, remnants of moments that nourished her newfound purpose. I understand that. But growth isn't just linear, he insisted. We both have scars. What if instead of letting the past define our future, we could construct something new? We could find healing in honesty. His suggestion wrapped around her like a vine, squeezing and softening all at once. Could there be a way to coexist, a way to confront their shared history without letting it poison the spaces she had carefully curated? The clock on the wall ticked softly, each sound intensifying the pause between them. Margaret realized her 5 minutes had become a flashpoint, the tipping point toward transformation or stagnation, personal growth or retreat. Your time's almost up, Derek, she said, her voice oddly steady. But there's so much at stake here, for both of us. If we decide to do this, we must approach it with complete honesty. No more secrets. His eyes widened slightly, the flicker of a smile breaking through the unease. I can do that. I'll face whatever it takes to earn your trust. Margaret took a breath, feeling the stirrings of hope and fear grapple within her. In this moment, she stood at a crossroads. Choosing. To unravel the past might lead to a deeper understanding of herself and her relationships, yet it also opened the door to vulnerabilities she had long safeguarded. As she contemplated the weight of her next words, a sudden realization dawned upon her. Healing was not merely about confrontation, it was about envisioning a future she never thought possible. All right, let us begin, she declared, feeling a newfound resolve solidify within her. But know this, there will be no holding back, on either side. Derek nodded solemnly, prepared to step into the unknown. Would this new path lead to fortitude or further fracture? The possibility electrified the air around them. Margaret knew they were delving into uncharted territory. Freedom or captivity, understanding or continued conflict, what awaited them was unclear, but she felt ready for it. As she prepared to navigate this unpredictable landscape, the question lingered, could confronting the past really unlock the keys to their future, or would it leave them both exposed, unraveling what had been meticulously stitched together? Derek took a deep breath, pulling his thoughts together. So where do we start? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper, yet it filled the space between them with a palpable urgency. Margaret felt her heart pound in response, not just to his question but to the weight of the moment. Let us begin with honesty, she suggested, her tone resolute but fragile. You say you want to change, but what does that look like? What have you really done over these years to confront your past? She could sense the fragility in her stance. It was a balancing act between curiosity and self-defense. Derek's eyes were heavy with introspection, as though searching for memories that had remained dormant for too long. I've gone to therapy. I've met with my kids' counselors to better understand how my decisions impacted them. I went back to school, learned new skills, things I neglected when I originally ran away. And did any of it teach you what you did to me? Margaret challenged, a sharpness in her voice cutting through the layers of their past. She could feel the adrenaline coursing through her, a mixture of fear and renewed vigor wrapped in uncertainty. Every single day, he replied, his gaze unwavering. It was painful, Margaret. It still is. But the moment I faced my mistakes was a moment of liberation. Something flickered in her chest, the notion of liberation juxtaposed against the chains of her own solitude clanking in her mind. What would it feel like, she mused, to liberate herself from her own hesitations, acknowledging trauma rather than letting it dictate her narrative? Painful doesn't begin to cover it, she said, the rawness of her voice surprising even herself. I had to rebuild my life from ashes, Derek. I'm not sure if I want to go through that kind of tumult again. Derek shifted in his seat, leaning slightly closer. I understand, and I'm not here to make false promises. Trust is earned, and I'm prepared to show you I'm worthy of it. I've learned that it isn't enough to just say you're sorry. I want to make tangible changes. Tangible. The word echoed in her mind, crystalline and sharp. Her life had become an intricate tapestry threaded with resilience, yet Derek's presence stirred the shadows. Did his steps toward change mirror her own? Was there space within her world for this potential collaboration, or would it only serve to destabilize the new ground she had gained? What if I decide to trust you again? She challenged, meeting his earnest gaze with steely resolve. What happens if you fail me again? His expression shifted, transitioning to a focus that struck Margaret's heart. Then you cut me out of your life completely. But I'm here now, and I'm willing to be vulnerable, to stand exposed alongside you, even amidst the possibility of failure. The tension in the room vibrated with unspoken implications. That weight of vulnerability, what a powerful enemy to confront. Margaret found herself reflecting not just on Derek's words, but on her own journey. If she could reinforce her boundaries and embrace the potential for mutual growth, what would that mean for her? I've gained strength since you left. I've found ways to heal and build something beautiful for myself and my girls. Her words held a steadiness, yet a flicker of doubt caught her off guard. But you must acknowledge that this could be a new risk for me. Then let us take that risk together, Derek replied, voice earnest. I want to be a part of your journey, to learn from it alongside you. There are parts of me that need that, too. Margaret closed her eyes for a moment, sifting through memories of pain intertwined with motifs of strength. This moment, raw and unfiltered, brought with it a kaleidoscope of possibilities. She was not only a survivor of scars but also a creator of new narratives. This intersection with Derek was nothing short of chaos, it could birth either devastation or a newfound synergy. As she opened her eyes, she felt a sense of urgency rising. A steely determination grabbed hold, to either sever this thread for good or weave it into something exceptional that dissipated the past's grip. All right, she said, the decision forming like steel over fire. I will allow you into my life, but mark my words, this begins with complete transparency. If we're going to move forward, we have to face everything together. The seriousness in her voice charged the atmosphere, a moment of collective acknowledgement. They had crossed a threshold, the unknown loomed ahead, dark with uncertainty and light with potential. Could they construct a foundation from the ruins left behind? She inhaled sharply, ready to step into the next chapter of their lives. As she considered their upcoming journey, another thought struck her. What hidden comforts or talents had lain dormant in her during these past years that she could now reclaim alongside this tumultuous past? The answer seemed to pulse just beyond her reach, tantalizing and provocative, as she prepared to dive deeper into the abyss that lay ahead. As the days following that pivotal conversation with Derek unfolded, Margaret embraced the daunting challenge of facing the uncertainty that had long governed her life. With each passing moment, she navigated the delicate balance of probing the depths of her new beginnings while acknowledging the weight of her past. Joining forces with Claire and Elise, the three created an atmosphere that radiated acceptance and laughter. They began hosting weekly family game nights, a tradition that naturally birthed itself from their reconciliation. The laughter of children echoed more vibrantly with each gathering, a stark contrast to the silence that once populated her home, intertwining their lives with renewed bonds. Margaret actively participated in these moments, her heart swelling for the connection they cultivated. Encouraged by this support, she decided to channel her passions into tangible changes in her life. She enrolled in a local community center's art class, a move she never thought she'd make at this stage. The pigments of paint sparked a long-suppressed desire to create, revealing an unexpected sanctuary for her unfurling spirit. She conquered her doubts, allowing herself to share her work during the Class S showcase, receiving praise that reinforced her healing journey. Through her experiences, the relationship with Derek matured gradually. Each conversation was a brushstroke on the canvas of their newly emerging dynamic, a fusion of openness and vulnerability. They met consistently, setting aside time to unpack both the burden of their shared history and the hopeful prospects for their future. Margaret began to perceive this willingness to confront discomfort as essential not just for herself, but for the possibility of genuine connectivity. It was Clara and Elise who reminded her repeatedly that the ties of family can transform, rather than simply redefine, through honesty and growth. In those moments of intimacy, Margaret unveiled the layers of her transformation to Derek. Share by share, they dissected her pain and explored the threads of her existence that had created the tapestry of isolation she resided in for too long. "You've pushed through the darkness," Derek remarked while watching Margaret paint one evening, awe coloring his voice. "You've built something astounding." With each passing week, a renewed confidence bloomed within her, legitimizing the shifts she had long feared. Life didn't conform to the rigid patterns she had once expected. It danced to a rhythm that swayed between joy and uncertainty, all while painting over the sadness that had felt inescapable for years. Recognizing that she was growing roots in this newfound connection opened the door to uncharted territory. Margaret was more than just a collection of her past, she was now a conduit of potentiality. She found herself considering the ambition she had set aside in her personal and professional life. Therefore, she took a leap of faith, chaired the initiative to petition the community for more artistic programming in local schools, eager to inspire the creativity she had rediscovered. The day of the presentation arrived with the electric energy of hope pulsing through her veins. Margaret stood before a panel of decision-makers, each seat filled with individuals attentive to the urgency in her voice. Gone were the remnants of self-doubt. She spoke emphatically about the necessity of nurturing young artistic minds, fueled by her own journey to reclaim joy through creation. Her passion radiated. As she detailed possible programs targeting underprivileged students, she could see the interest behind the faces before her grow. "Art can heal," she declared, a confidence coursing through each articulated thought. "It teaches resilience, builds community, and empowers young creators to embrace their own stories." The panel listened intently, and when Margaret concluded, a ripple of applause broke the silence. She had conquered not just the fear of public speaking, but she had emerged as a wellspring of purpose. Days later, driven by a profound sense of accomplishment, Margaret received the news her proposal was accepted, the first step toward bringing artistic expression to the youth in her community. The recognition felt monumental. As she shared the news with Claire, Elise, and Tom, the triumph spread warmth rather than solitude throughout her realm. Margaret had learned coexistence across the intersections of joy, creativity, vulnerability, and, ultimately, love. As she reflected on her journey, she understood that her birthday was no longer defined by absence. Rather, it served as the genesis of a new chapter, a celebration of not just one woman's growth, but an unbreakable bond between a family treasuring their resilience together. The shadows of the past no longer haunted her but rather illuminated the path ahead. She had achieved something remarkable not only for herself but for others too. Through the act of creating space where healing was possible, she painted a brighter world where connection reigned and possibilities flourished. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, Margaret stood tall, contentment wrapped around her like a cherished blanket. The weight of isolation lifted, she found solace in her achievements and the vibrant tapestry of a life no longer constrained by silence. So, dear audience, as you reflect on this story of transformation and discovery, it's more than just a journey, it's an invitation for you to step boldly toward your own paths of personal growth. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.